There's nothing better than an old-fashioned camp battle, and we've got a bunch of them brewing for this Chiefs training camp. Matt Derrick's here to break it all down today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. We're brought to you today by Gametime. You can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONNFL. You're going to get $20 off of your first ticket purchase. Terms apply, but check it out. We have a great show for you today. Matt Derrick is back with us for our weekly insider hit. We appreciate you, Matt, giving us the real deal. We have to cover a number of topics, but if you want more from Matt, go to ChiefsDigest.com or go watch Chiefs Digest here on the YouTube platform. There's a link in the description, and it'll get you right over to Matt's channel. We obviously are going to do this like we do every day. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, as well as NFL33.com and RGRFootball.com. And, you know, Matt, I don't know if you know this, but we've been pushing 7 years doing this show every week together. And I appreciate you. And I just want to shout that out for all of our viewers, folks. Matt's been covering this forever. I've been on my point of view covering this team for going on 13 years. So overall, been a long run. And camp's always the anticipation value. So what's about to happen? DBs are going to go at it. There's like 1,000 of them in camp. We don't know who's going to be where. We got a couple of questions. There's going to be fallout from the left tackle competition. We're going to talk about that in the next segment about what happens in every given scenario. But we got to start in what is, I think, a more wide open competition at the wide receiver spot than was even going last year, Matt, when they had to keep 7 guys because there was so much talent of similar levels. I really see 2 tiers on this roster, but I think the competition for the second group of 4 is going to be, if not more so than last year, an epic group that could end up any number of combinations. This might be the biggest battle we've seen in a long time at this spot. How do you feel about the wide receiver competition?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, last year, you know, and maybe we're going to end up in the same situation. I mean, I've had some people who said, you know, when I did my 53 roster projection last week, saying you kept 7 wide receivers. This team kept 7 wide receivers last year, and it turns out they didn't have any receivers. This year, it's a different group. I mean, it's a different situation. I mean, to me, you're looking at it, and I'm debating about whether this team is going to be keeping both Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney. Last year at this time, both those receivers were locks. There weren't that many people in front of them. I mean, they were both absolutely making this team. And now I think that they're both in a bubble situation. Bringing in a Hollywood Brown obviously helps with that. Bringing in an Xavier Worthy helps with that. I mean, you get 2 receivers that come in like that, and then, you know, you've got your confidence in Rashee Rice. This is a completely different group this year, Ryan. It really is. And I mean, I can make a case for as many as 11 receivers, you know, putting together enough work to make this team. I mean, a couple of them would need to have some luck go their way and have a really terrific camp. But of the 13 receivers that I count in camp, like I said, I could make a case for 11 of them to have a chance at making this roster.
I have to agree. And I think in particular, you named the top 3 that are really the elite of the elite. And then I would probably throw in Justin Watson as the top 4 guys that the team feels can go in and do what they want to do. But that's, I think, the first tier. The second tier for me is those 2 guys you mentioned, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore. And then I do feel that McCole Hardman should be in the mix, as should Nico Romeo after what we've seen so far. But that's another 4 guys competing for, I feel, at most 2 spots for a total of 6 on the 53-man roster. I understand why you had to go 7 because there's just too many choices, right?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, there's a top tier of 4 receivers, and they're all a little bit different. I mean, Hollywood and Rashee, you watch them on the field during OTAs, and you can tell they're different players. I mean, they're almost maybe a sub-tier of themselves because they're on a different level right now than Justin Watson is. And we really don't know where to slot Xavier Worthy. I mean, I think he's going to be closer than those 2. But, you know, for this year as a rookie, if you want to include him in kind of a tier with Justin Watson, I'm cool with that. But those 4 are going to make the team. I mean, I would be stunned if those 4 did not. I mean, Watson's the only one that I think you would say has a smaller chance of making the team. But even then, I think he's 95% plus, just because he knows everything. He's comfortable in this offense. Chiefs feel like they can put him in any situation. He's the best complementary receiver that they've got, as far as a guy that, can do the dirty work to help other guys get open. So, he's not exactly an Albert Wilson. Nico Remigio might be the next Albert Wilson. We'll find out about that. But I've got my second tier is a little bit bigger than yours, but I can make a case that those guys probably belong in maybe the third tier as well, because my second tier are all the guys that I think can make this roster. Obviously, Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney, McCole Hardman are in there. Justin Ross is in there for me, Montrell Washington. And after OTAs, I'm going to do the honor of giving Cornell Powell a spot in there, because he had a really good offseason workouts. And I get it. I mean, Cornell has done this before. He's had a really good offseason, gets into camp, had a really good camp beginning of last year too. And then pads come on and kind of separates a little bit and falls behind. But I'm going to do him the pleasure of putting him in there, because he was getting first team looks. He's been working with Mahomes. I mean, the Chiefs haven't given up on Cornell Powell as a prospect. Does he have a farther uphill climb? Yeah. But I'm going to put him in that conversation. And then, you have your third tier where I have Phillip Brooks and Jaron Hayek. Those are a couple of guys there to learn. Hey, maybe they could be practice squad guys. It would take a lot for them to make a roster bid, but hey, they're on the team. Got to pay attention.
I like the way that goes. And you never know who's going to jump onto the practice squad and give you that depth. I think maybe the discussion will shift as we get into camp and we see how everybody does. Like you said, once pad comes on, that's a delineation point in every single camp. What's it going to be this year? That's going to be the big question. Folks, we are here on the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every single day. If you would like this video and subscribe to the channel, we would appreciate it. You can check out Matt's channel as well, called Chiefs Digest, here on the platform. But then go over and hit Spotify and Apple Music and get subbed on the audio platforms as well, because we're here free for you 5 days a week plus. And when we get back, what we have to look at is the 2 options, maybe 3 options for the left tackle spot, and what the fallout means across not only the offensive line unit, but the rest of the offense and the team roster as a whole. So who can win it? Is it Wanya Morris or is it Kingsley Suamataia? I'm really interested to see, and we're going to get to that coming up next here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Summer's in full swing, and we're getting ready for football season. It doesn't matter whether you're trying to go to MLB right now and go see the Royals, or you're waiting on your preseason tickets, your Chiefs tickets for the regular season, or even those cold, snowy days. The best way to get it done is Game Time. It helps if you can plan. I fully admit that, but sometimes you just can't. And so last-minute deals are exactly what you're looking for, whether it's the section of the stadium that you want, whether it's the seat exactly that you want, or whether you're just looking for that last-minute super saver. You can save up to 60% on tickets last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, anything at Game Time. This is really important. I sit in one section of Arrowhead, and I really love it. It's a zone deal. And when that comes up, I try to go all in, because they give you all in pricing with no hidden fees. It takes the guesswork out of getting tickets for Arrowhead, but for baseball as well. You can get it all at Game Time. So download the Game Time app, create your account, and use our code LOCKEDONNFL. You're going to get $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply, but it's super simple. Create an account. Use our code LOCKEDONNFL, and you're going to get $20 off of your first ticket purchase. So download it today. It's last-minute tickets. It's lowest prices, and they are always game. I love it when it happens like that, and you can love it at 24/7 at the Locked On Sports Today feed. Check it out here on YouTube or on Amazon Fire TV. And guaranteed is the word that I was looking for. Nothing is guaranteed in these particular battles, Matt. So the big one, and we don't have to get into who wins this battle. What I want to look at is something that the coaching staff has to look at as well. So Kingsley Suamataia, second-round pick, in that battle with Wanya Morris, a third-round pick, but a guy who's got some reps, got some game experience. It should be a back and forth, I think, at least to start training camp. We'll see who wins it. I have my thoughts. That'll be another show. But the difference, I think, is who wins it depends on what goes on for depth at the swing tackle position. It depends what happens with Joe Thuney, if somebody has to stand in there, and which scenario is better for that. I want to break that down and tell me your thoughts. If Wanya Morris actually proves out to be the better left tackle in training camp, what does that mean for the rest of this decision process?
Yeah, that's intriguing, because if Wanye does win that job, then I think it does send a lot of questions into just how you structure this offensive line. I mean, if Wanye is the better left tackle, what do you do with Kingsley? Do you leave him as at left tackle and just use him as a swing tackle this year, and then next year you have the battle all over again? You're going to have Jawan Taylor for a while. Do you move Kingsley around? I mean, right now the Chiefs are showing that their preference would probably be that Wanye would be the guy that they would like to move around. That's the guy that they feel like is maybe better suited to play guard as well as a little bit of tackle. Now, maybe that's just investment in your second round pick, that they want to make sure that Kingsley is doing one thing and not asking him to do too much. I mean, Wanye, they didn't ask him to do anything other than play tackle last year. Now that he's a second year player, maybe they're more willing to ask him to do different things. But there's a few different scenarios. I mean, if Wanye comes out and has proven that he is the superior tackle early on, then the question is, there's a second question, is that not only, the first question is he better than Suamataia? But then the question is he better than someone else that's out there? Is he better than a Donovan Smith? Is he better than the David Bakhtiari? I mean, those are about the only two names that I think that are out there that the Chiefs might be interested in. And that's only if both Kingsley and Wanye both, struggle early in camp. I mean, I think you're looking at getting to August 1st, and if the Chiefs feel like they need a veteran, that's the line of demarcation. That's when they're going to call a veteran and say, okay, hey, we'd like you to come into camp because we think you might be our starting left tackle. I'm not sure if either one of those guys are going to go to a place if they're not the starting left tackle. So that kind of is prohibitive of, I think, the Chiefs adding a veteran right now. Because right now, I mean, indication is that the Chiefs are either going to go with Kingsley or Wanye. It's up to them and one of them to grab that job by around the neck right now.
I agree with you. And I think in this situation, Kingsley's a little harder to project. Like you said, probably best for him to stay at a single position. But if he wins that job, that opens up, I think, the whole can of worms, because if he wins the job over Wanya Morris and he is the left tackle, I think that takes out scenario number 3, where you have to go out and look at a veteran coming in halfway through training camp, trying to get going again. I know folks will say Bakhtiari is the better athlete at this point. I still think Donovan Smith will have an advantage if they feel they need to go do that because of last season. But if Kingsley wins the left tackle spot, what do you do with the rest of the line, particularly starting with Wanye? But what's the fallout for everyone else?
Yeah, I mean, and there's a little bit of, question fallout regardless of who wins that left tackle spot. But let's walk through it if Kingsley does win it. I mean, what do you do with Wanye? I mean, does he become a player that you turn into maybe a 4-position utility type player? The Chiefs have always loved to have those guys. Cam Irving was one. Zach Fulton was one. I mean, they love to have a 6th lineman that can do a little bit of everything. And the fact that they've sprinkled, Morris in a little bit at guard during OTAs, I think is an indication that they'd like to see what kind of versatility he has. And I think definitely size-wise that I think he would be a better fit for that. Kingsley, I think, is just a little too big to be moving inside. Wanye, I think you could probably do that with. But then you got the question, is Lucas Niang your 4th tackle? I mean, that's another question. I mean, he should be fully recovered. He was recovered enough last year that they trusted him to be on the backup, to be on the active roster all year after coming off the patella tendon. But, hey, is he somebody that maybe you could move for draft picks if, a team needs some depth at left tackle or right tackle? I mean, is this now a position where the Chiefs could actually be maybe trying to make a move? Because can you keep 4 tackles on the roster? Yeah, but is that going to be a great fit? I don't know. I think there's a few guys, Mike Caliendo and Hunter Norzad. I don't think it's going to have any effect on them. I think they're both making this roster. CJ Hansen's probably going to be one of the guys that you have to make a decision on about whether you protect him or not. And we just don't know. I mean, with the rookies and Kingsley and Norzad and Hansen, we don't know what's going to happen when the pads come on, how they're going to look on an NFL line. But I do think that they get affected a little bit by how this line gets structured, because if the Chiefs keep 9 or 10 offensive linemen, I mean, how the tackle position sorts out is going to affect, I think, who are those 8th, 9th, and 10th linemen.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I think the mix and match is more variable with Wanye. I think we've talked about the battle. I like him in at guard. It all depends on Joe Thuney about how dramatic that need is. We'll see how he responds in training camp, what his pitch count is initially, which I do expect as he walks onto the field for the first time in 6 months. That is, I think, significant. So let's see where he gets there, and we'll watch the dominoes fall as they will. But I like the concept for 2 young guys in competition. I think everybody wins, particularly the team, when that happens. Now, that's fine for 2 guys. But when you have 17 at one position group, things get a little bit more difficult down there. The cornerbacks are just, I think they're multiplying somewhere. The meeting room is just sprouting up new DBs every 5 seconds. What do we do with that? That's coming up next year on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, 24/7, you can get us on Locked On Sports Today. It's all the best and biggest stories from the local hosts that know their teams, not shouting heads on ESPN and CBS. Make sure that you go get that whenever you need it, whether you're up late or you're out early, whatever you're looking for, it's on Locked On Sports Today, here as well as on Amazon Fire TV. Now, you can get all Matt's information. Make sure that you head over to Chiefs Digest here on YouTube and on ChiefsDigest.com. Get everything that Matt's putting out, because he's going to tell you more than I'm going to ask him to tell him now, because I have certain needs. And one of them, Matt, is for you to draw me a map of how anybody besides Trent McDuffie gets to where he's going to get to in this training camp.
Well, I'm glad you put it that way, because I think you look at the cornerbacks and you talk about the multiplying. I mean, it does look like gremlins out there. I mean, Dave Merritt better not, give these guys, water or feed them after midnight or anything like that. Don't get them wet. I count 9 guys that legitimately are NFL corners, I think, and certainly have a chance at making this roster. But outside of Trent McDuffie, I can't pin one into any particular spot. I mean, Trent McDuffie's your number 1 corner. He certainly is going to play outside a lot more this year than he has in the past. Wouldn't surprise me if you still saw him in the slot, and maybe in particularly against maybe the more tougher matchups that the Chiefs are going to see. I mean, is he going to be the travel guy? Everybody's kind of keeping tight-lipped about that if they're going to ask Trent McDuffie to do that. But, one role I could absolutely see for him is that if the Chiefs are going up against a team where their best threat is in the slot, maybe McDuffie does play in the slot more against those teams. I think it's going to be matchup specific. And honestly, you know what? We've seen matchup specific the last few seasons be the selection for maybe who's the 3rd and 4th and 5th corners on a weekly basis. This year it might be the 2 as well, because I don't know if I can tell you that Josh Williams, Najee Johnson, and Jalen Watson, if any one of them, I can't guarantee you that any one of them is going to separate themselves from the pack. Najee obviously has the challenge of coming back from the ACL injury. If he picks up where he left off last year, he's absolutely going to give it a run for being the starter. If Josh Williams can continue to grow, I mean, he can make it a run for it as well. He's not only got the talent, but obviously the size, the speed. There's a lot of things that he seems to really be coming into himself with this year. And he could make that leap. We've talked about that. Was a smaller college corner coming in, had less experience than the other guys. So whereas Jalen Watson and he came in together, Jalen kind of came in with a higher floor, but maybe a lower ceiling. Josh Williams still has a lot of ceiling that he can reach. And I'm kind of doing a mea culpa this week, in the last week or so, on Jalen Watson, Ryan, because I feel like I probably have given him a little bit of shortchanged on the fact that he played all year through that shoulder injury. And during OTAs this year, he's had a little bit of I think it was a hamstring tweak, but he had a soft tissue injury that also limited him a little bit during the offseason workouts. You look at his performance last year and you factor in the injury, and that guy really gutted through it. So even though, hey, Dave Merritt did say that sometimes you saw some bad rookie habits coming back in with him, I don't think you can discount him. I mean, I think he absolutely has to be in that conversation. And then we haven't even gotten to the draft picks from the last 2 years and Nick Jones and Kamal Hadden. They're both obviously Nick Jones, I think, is going to be your backup and your corner that if you're going to put into the slot, he's probably the guy. He and Shamari Connor as a safety are going to probably share that position a little bit. And Haddon, I mean, if he's just there for special teams or to learn, I think he's making the 53. Then what do you do with Echo Boydo and Kelvin Joseph and Keith Taylor? All three of those guys have had good offseason workouts. And obviously they all fit in well with what Spags and Merritt want to do. I think I mean, if the Chiefs have to put Echo Boydo on waivers, I think they're absolutely losing him. So I don't think he's making it back to the practice squad this year. Joseph and Taylor, they might, because they've been around the league a little bit. So, it's a chance that the Chiefs might be able to bank on having those guys on the practice squad just in case of emergencies. But both those guys look like they've really taken to the system here pretty well. And Spags has a defense in which, for lack of a better phrase, you can be a system corner. You can really thrive in Spagnuolo's defense without having an elite skill set. If you've got an elite skill set, you can be a star, but you don't have to in order to just, make plays and be an important part of this defense. And from what we saw in the off season, Kelvin Joseph really looks pretty good in this defense. And I think both those guys, I think Keith Taylor could fit in as well.
I like that you mentioned both those guys. I had Joseph's number one fit in his draft class being the Chiefs because of the system. So it does make a lot of sense. I can guarantee you one thing. The starting outside corners will be from the 2022 draft class. I am certain of that. That's about all I'm certain of, but I'm certain of that. What I'm hoping for is that we see this roster mature. I do like Shamari Connor moving full-time to the nickel because I like to have Trent outside where he can focus on an outside receiver and just take him away. I think that helps Spags immensely. But I'm also banking on a lot of competition. Keith Taylor was overlapped with Trent McDuffie at Washington. Jalen Watson was overlapped with Jaden Hicks at Wazoo. We have a lot of Washington DBs on this roster right now, which I'm personally fine with going to high school out there. I appreciate you all. But it also brings this kind of meandering look at who's where. Shamari Connor in particular, Jaden Hicks another, but I like the fact that there are DBs on this roster. They don't necessarily have to be corners versus safeties versus whatever. I think in the end, the question for me that is overriding is no matter whether you're a position specific or you're just a DB that can do a little bit of everything, like Ron Parker, is it 10? Is it 11? Can you get by with 9, Matt? Like there's all these other questions at the other two positions that we've already spoken about. What has the preference and what do you see them doing in the end in terms of volume at the secondary positions?
Yeah, it's really going to be interesting, and especially because, I mean, this roster is really tilted toward corners. I mean, they only have 6 pure safeties on this team, and Shamari Connor isn't even a pure safety. I mean, they're playing him slot corner. I mean, you could argue that he's half corner and half safety. I mean, he's kind of got a little bit of a L'Jarius Sneed usage to him going right now. And I think that they've got some other guys who could fit into that as well. I mean, Nick Jones is kind of taking a version of the L'Jarius Sneed path, and that, working him on the inside and being a nickel corner, with the idea that maybe he can grow into a larger role. I mean, he's not coming along as quickly as L'Jarius did. I think L'Jarius had a different skill set. He had more experience, some more time in college. So I think that was a good experience for him coming in and gave him an advantage. And so, they've got a lot of guys who can do a lot of different things. At safety, I mean, you've got 4 that I feel pretty confident are going to make the team. Deion Bush is a great, safety valve to have around. That's a veteran who can choose where he wants to be. And if he wants to be in Kansas City, you can keep him on the practice squad. You can get him some practice squad elevations. And I'll tell you what, Ryan, I mean, that's one thing for me that, we've talked a lot about with these new kickoff rules, that maybe you want to have an extra corner or an extra safety. The Chiefs are going to have a situation where maybe they have a Cole Christensen, maybe, and a Deion Bush. They might have 3 or 4 players that they have on the practice squad that would fit into that linebacker safety model, that they could bring up just every single week a different guy to have an extra special teams player for kickoffs. Really just, I mean, use that practice squad almost as having a 54-man roster. I mean, you really could kind of do that. And there's ways to reset the clock, obviously, with releasing guys and re-signing them and resetting their practice squad elevations. And when you've got some veterans like a Christensen and B. Bush that you don't have to expose to waivers, I mean, there's some tricks to the trade that you can kind of work around. So, it's the corner battle is going to be much, much more difficult. I mean, safety looks like it's pretty well figured out. The one X factor for me is Trey Dean, because he played through OTAs like his hair was on fire. Just absolutely the most fired up guy on the defense, plays at 110%. I'm intrigued to see what happens when the pads come on, because, he had injuries that kind of slowed him down last year in his bid. It's an undrafted guy, probably could have been drafted if he came in completely healthy into the league. I'm interested to see what happens, because he had a really good offseason.
Hey, that's a big bonus. Ride the hot hand when you can. This is a pretty deep roster at this position. I think some of them will be trade options as well. So let's see who gets hot. Folks, we are nearing training camps opening, just a couple of weeks here. We've gone through a number of positions. We're going to continue tomorrow by highlighting the impact makers at each position as we break them down and get you ready for camp. You can find that starting tomorrow, as you can find all the breaking information at 816-357-8781 on our text line. You locos, we appreciate you everydayers. Thank you again. And thank you, Matt, for being here to set us straight.
7 years and counting. I'm not going anywhere, Ryan. So unless
That's
you kick
what
me
I'm
out.
talking about. Nah, hey, you can take over for me at some point. Folks, check out Matt at ChiefsDigest.com. Have a great day. Thank you for being with us to this point. We have a ton coming as we get ready for the big push to the big day when the Chiefs are back on the field and ready to run at that three-peat. Thanks for spending your day with us tomorrow and today and the next day, and we'll be with